My Playful Wife, Episode 3, What Leaves Behind, written by Mia. The bra was pale yellow, trimmed with something delicate at the edge, lace, or the suggestion of lace, and it was sitting on the arm of the chair in the living room when I walked out that morning. Just sitting there, in the open, as though it had always belonged on the arm of that particular chair and had simply been waiting for someone to notice. I noticed. I stood in the doorway between the hall and the living room in my work clothes, pressed shirt, shoes already on, bag in hand, and I looked at it for a full 5 seconds. My brain did the quiet, immediate arithmetic that brains do, how it had gotten there, from where, in what sequence of events. It took less than a second. The arithmetic was simple. It told a story. Not a long story, not a complicated one. Just a small, very clear story about a garment that had started the morning somewhere it should not have been and had been hurried off, forgotten in the rush of reassembling the ordinary. From the kitchen came the sound of Saloni, the stove clicking on, the tap running, the rhythm of her mornings, which I knew as well as I knew the sound of my own footsteps, the particular domestic music of a person at ease in her own kitchen, unhurried, humming something wordless and low. She was making breakfast as though yesterday had a completely different shape than the one it actually had. I set my bag down. I walked to the chair. I picked up the bra carefully between 2 fingers, holding it slightly away from my body the way you hold something you're examining rather than claiming. I turned it once. The pale yellow, the delicate edge, the 2 small hooks at the back that had been done and undone by hands that were not mine. Saloni, I called. A beat. A very precise, very calculated beat, the pause of someone who has registered the call and is deciding how to receive it. "What?" she called back. Her voice was cheerful, morning voice, entirely constructed of the ordinary. Nothing in it but breakfast and Tuesday. "Your bra is in the living room." This pause was different, shorter. The pause of someone who has been expecting exactly this and has their response already loaded. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, spatula in hand, face composed with the specific composure of a woman who has never in her life been genuinely surprised, who has, at most, been mildly inconvenienced by circumstances that other people might find disruptive. "Oh," she said, "that." "This," I agreed, holding it up between my 2 fingers. She crossed the room. She took it from me with the easy authority of someone reclaiming something entirely ordinary, the way you pick up your own book from a table, the way you take your own umbrella from the stand. No hesitation, no performance of guilt. She didn't look at my face as she did it. Or rather, she looked at my face and then chose, with great deliberateness, to look slightly past it, at the wall, at the window, at some point in the middle distance that required her full attention. "The strap snapped," she said. "I was taking something down from the top shelf, and I took it off. I must have set it down and forgotten." I looked at her. She looked at the wall. "Which shelf?" I said. "The one in the kitchen," she said, "with the spice boxes." I thought about the geometry of this. I was, in another life, an engineering student. I understood spatial logic. The kitchen shelf with the spice boxes was on the far wall above the counter. The living room chair was through a doorway and 6 feet to the left. The path between them would require, at minimum, a change of rooms and a specific reason to carry an unclasped bra from one to the other and then leave it on a chair arm. I thought about what task would accomplish this. I thought for quite a while. "Right," I said. "Tea's ready," she said. She went back to the kitchen with the bra and the spatula and the composure of someone who has handled much harder conversations than this and found them navigable. I heard the drawer open, the one where she kept the things that needed to be dealt with later. The sound of the drawer closing. Story folded.
Filed.
I picked up my bag. I went and sat at the table. Piyush came out of his room at 7:30 with his bag packed and the compact efficiency of someone who has decided what they're taking and is not second-guessing it. He was leaving that evening, night train to Pune, exams starting Monday, the practical machinery of his life requiring him to return to it. He looked rested. I want to linger on this detail because I think it matters, not as accusation, not as injury, but as information. He looked rested in the specific way that people look when they have used their time well, when the body has been given something it needed. There was an ease in his face, a looseness in his shoulders. He moved through the flat the way he always moved, with the unself-conscious physicality of a young man who has never had reason to be uncomfortable in his own skin. I looked at my brother across the breakfast table. 23 years old, the youngest of us, the one my mother had carried in the summer and delivered in the heat and worried about his whole childhood because he'd been a sickly infant, small and fierce and determined to survive. He had survived. He had more than survived. He stood in my kitchen in the morning light, alive and easy and full of something I was only beginning to understand I had given him permission to have. I thought about all the things we were both not saying. I found, somewhat to my surprise, that the inventory of those unsaid things did not destroy me. They sat there, heavy and specific, and I carried them, and I was still standing. "You didn't sleep well?" Saloni asked him, setting down his chai with the particular care she brought to things for people she was fond of. The good cup, the right temperature. "I slept fine," he said. "Thanks, Bobby."
Bobby.
The word for a brother's wife. Sister-in-law, roughly, though the English translation misses the weight of it, the specific warmth and complication of that relationship in our culture, the tradition of closeness and teasing, and a particular kind of intimacy that exists in the space between family and something else. He said it the same way he always said it. Warm, easy, familiar. I ate my toast. The conversation was entirely normal. This is what continued to unsettle me most. Not the abnormality, but the profound, unnerving normalcy. We talked about his exams. He talked about a professor he disliked, a problem set that had defeated 3 sleepless nights, a project due in April. Saloni asked questions, and he answered them, and I watched them talk and thought, this is also real. This warmth, this ease, this genuine affection, it is also completely real. Nothing about the last 24 hours had been false. That was the thing I could not locate a place to put. She laughed at something he said, a quick, genuine laugh, the kind that doesn't ask permission. The laugh that started in her stomach. I knew that laugh. I had been hearing it for 3 years, across dinner tables and in the dark, and on phone calls I was not part of, and it was still the realest sound I knew. The morning light came through the kitchen window at its usual angle. The chai was exactly right. The toast had butter on it because I had been the one to make it and I always put too much butter, and Saloni had never once in 3 years told me to use less. I thought, this is my life. All of this together. The toast and the light and the laugh and the pale yellow bra in the drawer and my brother eating his 3rd sandwich. All of it together, simultaneously true. After breakfast, I told them I had to go into work early. "I'll be home by 7, I said to Saloni. "I'll make something good," she said, and meant it. She always made something good. This was the kind of woman she was. She fed people with the same seriousness that other people gave to important projects, as if the act of putting good food in front of someone she loved was itself a form of love that deserved the full weight of her attention. I said goodbye to Piyush. I shook his hand. We had never been huggers. Our family expressed things through practical gestures, through being present, through doing the thing that needed doing rather than speaking it. He held the handshake a beat longer than usual. His grip said what he wasn't going to say, and I understood it, and I held it back. "Come back soon," I said. "I will," he said. He was not only talking about visits. I left. I stood in the corridor for a moment with my back to the closed flat door, my hand still resting on the cool metal of the handle. I stood there, and I listened to the silence on the other side of it. Then I heard Saloni laugh. Not the public laugh, the other one. I took my hand off the door handle. I walked to the lift. I pressed the button and watched the numbers change, and thought about what it means when two different people are capable of drawing two entirely different laughs from the same woman, and what that means about the woman, and whether there was anything in that worth grieving. The lift came. I got in. Work was a series of rooms I moved through without fully entering. I sat at my desk, and the report existed, and I worked on it, and the work was competent and complete and occupied the part of my brain that could be occupied by such things, and the rest of me was somewhere else entirely. In the flat, in the kitchen, on the balcony with the watering can, in the corridor outside the closed door. I thought about Saloni's hands, the way they moved through the kitchen with a certainty that had always moved me. The economy of her gestures, the way she never made a wasted motion. I had loved this about her from the beginning. The groundedness of her. The sense that she existed entirely within herself, contained and whole, not needing the world's confirmation to know that she was real. I had just not understood the full scope of what that wholeness contained. At 11:30, a colleague asked me something, and I answered it correctly, and he went away satisfied, and I looked at what I'd said and had no memory of saying it. I thought about the pale yellow bra, the specific calm of her face when she took it from me, the way she hadn't insulted either of us by making the lie too elaborate, just the bare minimum of story, enough to move past the moment, trusting me to allow the passage. She had trusted me. I turned this over for a long time. The trust in it. The presumption, yes, but also the trust. She had looked at me, across our 3-year marriage, across everything she knew about who I was, and had decided, he will let this pass. Not because I'm a fool, because I'm the kind of man who chooses which battles to enter. Because she knows me. Do you know what it feels like to be known? Not the performed version, not the self you have assembled for general consumption, but the actual one, the one with the specific capacities and the specific limits, the one who goes very still when he's thinking hard, the one who puts too much butter on toast? She knew that man. And she had looked at him this morning and trusted him to hold what she was handing him without breaking it. I did not know yet whether I was going to live up to that trust. I did not know what I was going to do with what I knew, but I held it with more care, thinking about her trust, than I had been holding it before. I left work at 6 and sat in a coffee shop around the corner from the flat for 45 minutes. This was a cowardly thing to do, and I want to name it as such. I sat in the coffee shop and I ordered something I didn't drink, and I watched the street, and I gave time the responsibility of figuring out what I was feeling, which is not something time does reliably. What time did do, it passed. The evening came in through the windows. The coffee got cold. People walked past carrying the visible evidence of their days. A woman with 2 children and an impossible number of bags. A man on a phone call, his face doing the specific thing faces do when a phone call is going very badly. An old couple moving slowly. The man's hand at the woman's back, not guiding, just present. I watched the old couple until they were out of sight. At 6:45, I paid and walked home. The flat smelled of cooking when I came in, something long and spiced, the kind of smell that means hours of attention, a meal that had been thought about. Saloni was at the stove. The flat was quiet in the specific way it goes quiet when a presence has recently left it a negative space, the shape of where someone was. Piyush was gone. He left at 4, she said, without my asking, without turning from the stove. Train's at 9. He wanted time. He'll be fine, I said. I know, she said. I put my bag down. I changed into the soft cotton kurta I wore at home. I came back to the kitchen and stood in the doorway and watched her cook. I watched with the new eyes, the ones I had been developing since the balcony morning, the ones that received her as she actually was rather than as I had assumed. She had changed her clothes. The blue Sal wore, loose and soft, the kind she wore when no one was coming and she wanted to be comfortable. Her hair was down, which she rarely did in evenings. Small choices, private ones. She was beautiful in a way that undid me, and I was standing in my own kitchen watching my own wife cook and feeling it the way you feel things you have stopped letting yourself feel, suddenly, completely, like a window opened in a sealed room. She turned and saw me watching. She did not look away. She met it. My gaze, my presence in the doorway, the weight of everything the day had contained, and she met it with the steadiness that was her most essential quality.
Sit, she said.
20 minutes.
Iset.
She served dinner. We ate at the small kitchen table, the 2 of us, in the particular quiet of a space that has given back its extra person and settled into itself. The food was extraordinary. It always was when she cooked long things, when she gave time to it. It's good, I said. The whole spices need time to open, she said. You can't rush them. I know, I said. She poured me more water. Her hand was near mine as she set the glass down, close enough that I could feel the warmth of it without being touched. She did not move it immediately. She left it there, close to mine, for a moment longer than the action required. He'll come back, she said. She was not talking about the spices. I know, I said. She looked at me directly then. For the first time since the morning, since the bra and the story and the careful geometry of her lie, she looked at me directly, and in her look was a question that was also a statement. You know, the look said, and you are still here, at this table, eating the food I made for you, present. Yes, I said. She nodded, once small, with a certainty that settled something. We finished dinner. She washed, I dried. We moved around the kitchen the way we had moved around kitchens for 3 years, the easy choreography of 2 people who have learned each other's rhythms. The particular music of it, dishes, water, the clink of the rack, was as familiar as breathing. Later, in the dark, she turned toward me. I held her the way I always held her, one arm, her head at my collarbone, and I felt her breathe, the slow, even deepening of her breath as she fell toward sleep. Her hand flat on my chest, the gesture she used when she wanted to feel that I was there without having to say so. I lay awake for a long time. I thought about the pale yellow bra, the story about the shelf, the trust in her face when she handed me the lie and watched me decide what to do with it. I thought about the word she had used, "He'll come back." Not he might or he could. He will. She had said it with certainty because she knew something I was still learning, that what had happened in this flat was not the beginning of a destruction. It was the beginning of a different architecture, one I did not yet have the plans for, but that was already quietly being built. I closed my eyes. Outside the city, inside the sound of her breathing. To be continued in episode 4, the shopping trip.
Simbolo di copyright Mia.
All rights reserved. That was episode 3 of my Playful Wife. If this story is staying with you, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
I've Mia.
Thank you for listening.